For quite a while now, you guys have been asking about our opinions on Shadow Systems, and today that is exactly what we're going to talk about. More specifically, we're going to talk about this pistol. This is the XR920. This is a pistol that back in the T&E days we tested. So this was about a year ago as of the making of this video. So we're going to go over our T&E summary of this pistol specifically, but also in this video what you guys are going to see is we're actually going to test some prototype slides from Shadow Systems. Now before we begin the testing of the prototype slides and before I share the results of the T&E summary, I just want to go over the features of Shadow System pistols and kind of how they relate to Glocks and how they're different. So let's get into it. So if you're unfamiliar with Shadow Systems, they are another Glock clone-ish. Now out of box, you're going to notice some upgrades per se, comparatively to stock Glocks, something like this Glock 19. Now this is my personal Glock 19, and it does have some upgrades to it that are going to look actually pretty similar to what the Shadow System comes with out of box. But I just want to go over with you guys what those things are and kind of maybe explain why these guns cost a little bit more than Glocks stock. So with the frame itself, you're going to get a couple controls that are a little bit improved. So you're going to get an extended magazine release. I actually really like this magazine release. You're going to get a little bit better of a slide release. It's not super extended, but it is a little bit longer, a little bit easier to use comparatively to like a stock Gen 3 Glock slide release. You're going to get a different shoe face on the trigger, so it's going to be a little bit more flat. Again, that's going to be kind of a personal preference thing. Not going to say that's necessarily upgraded. The trigger weight and everything is going to be about the same. And then the grip itself, you're going to have a slightly different angle. It's going to be modular, and you're going to have some texture to it that's going to be a little bit more aggressive than most stock Glocks. Now when I say most stock Glocks, I'm referring to not like RTF frames. So like those Gen 3 frames that are super grippy. This is not going to be as grippy as that, but for like a stock Gen 4, mine's stippled obviously, this is going to be a little bit better. And you're also going to have some cuts up here for your thumb to index on if you're into that sort of thing. I'm not. Now with the slide, let's start with the slide serration. So these are going to be a little bit more aggressive and possibly more aesthetically pleasing to you comparatively to, let's say, a Gen 5 Glock. Now previous generation Glocks besides Gen 5s, they didn't all have front serrations. Now every Gen 5 Glock that's made as of this date does have front serrations, but these are still going to be a little bit more aggressive. And like I said, they may look a little bit better to you. I actually personally like the look of stock Glocks, but most people like these angled, more aggressive looking cuts. Now, other than that, you're going to get some steel sights generally. Sometimes they're going to come with night sights, fiber optic. It just kind of depends on what model Shadow Systems you get. So that's definitely an improvement comparatively to polymer iron sights that you get with Glock. Now the optic cut is going to differ comparatively to an MOS Glock. So with MOS Glocks, you're going to have just a big cutout basically, and then you're going to need an adapter plate for whatever optic you run in here. So with this SRO, I have a adapter plate for the SRO attached to, and that adapter plate then attaches to the slide. With Shadow Systems, it's kind of a universal cut, and all you do is you put your optic on. There's a spacer that will either push the optic forward or backwards, depending if it's a delta point, RMR, Holosun, whatever the case may be, and then the optic mounts directly to the slide. So that is definitely more beneficial than an MOS cut in most people's opinions, because again, the optic is mounting directly to the slide. Now, this isn't universal for every optic. Like 509Ts and Acros will have a specific slide for that optic cut because that's just kind of a unique mounting footprint. But for most common top-down screw mounts, it's just one type of optic cut. Now, other than that, you're going to get a standard barrel and guide rod, depending on what model you get. And this is kind of the model that we have here. This is kind of like your duty grade. It's nothing. It's not ported with a compensator or anything like that. It doesn't have a threaded barrel. So this is kind of the more basic one. The other thing we have on the barrel here are these prototype slides. Now, full disclosure, we got these slides plus a couple others, and this pistol plus a couple other Shadow System complete pistols for free from Shadow Systems with the intention of testing and evaluating them. So the reason why we're testing and evaluating all of these things is to determine if T.REX Arms wants to work with Shadow Systems to make a T.REX Arms slide. So this is why these look a little bit different. They are completely stripped of branding. So these are just test slides. Our design's not gonna look like this, but again, we are testing and evaluating these to see if we're gonna have a T.REX Arms specific design cut for a T.REX Arms Glock slide made by Shadow Systems. So what we're going to do now, we went over the features of this pistol, and like I said, we're going to wait till the end of the video to go over the T&E summary of what our final opinion is on the complete pistol. But now what we're going to do is we're going to use both of these slides, and you guys are going to see the testing and evaluation process. Now I will say we do have a lot of rounds on this pistol already, so we're not going to do nearly as many on these slides because most of that durability, reliability testing's already been done. So all we want to do here is proof test these. So this is going to be more of a confirmation evaluation than a testing and evaluation process. With the two slides we're testing today, we have a Gen 4 and a Gen 5, one of which is their universal optic mounting cut that's the same as this one. So what we have on here is a Holosun 507 comp. So this is basically just an RMR. And then we have this is a Gen 4 19. This is an acro cut. So we haven't actually tested their acro cut yet. I know this is an MPS. MPS is an acro footprint, even though the optic's a little bit smaller. So we're just gonna see how well this actually works out on here. So I'm gonna be using the Gen 4 19 on my actual Glock 19 frame. And then we're gonna be using the 507 comp on the XR920 frame. So both of these slides, to be clear, are made for Glocks. They're not made for Shadow System frames, but it should work on both, and we're just gonna see what happens when I test them on both. So let's get into it. So doing some slide racking to test the optic mounting system on this slide. Like I said, we've already tested it on the full XR920 pistol with the Delta Point Pro, didn't have any issues. Now with this 507 comp, we got through 45 racks, 20 of which were on a Connex, 20 of which were on a piece of wood. Then I went to a piece of steel on a steel target and only got through 5. And the mounting system didn't fail, but the 507 comp definitely failed. You shattered it, didn't you? Dude! So, as you guys can see, that is shattered. Now, generally with optics, that should not be an issue because glass should not protrude the front housing of the optic, so you should be able to slide rack it. Now, when I was racking it off the Connex, I started to see some paint on the glass, and I thought maybe it was just, that's a thick layer of paint, so maybe just a little bit of paint was getting to it, but obviously, as I actually can look at it, I can see the glass is protruding past the housing, so I don't know if we're gonna be able to confirm zero to confirm that this optic mounting system is as good as the full pistol is, but we're gonna try and shoot a group with this. Got like 9 dots. All right, so there's like 9 dots. Trying to look through this shattered glass. It's not like I can just pretend it's occluded because it is so shattered. There's just no glass for the dot to reflect off of. So there's gonna be no way to confirm if this held zero or not at this point, unfortunately. So obviously the optic is shattered, no telling what could have caused this, but this was our zero group and then just fired 3. That's actually a pretty good group considering glass was literally flying out of the optic as we're shooting it. But I have to put the dot in the top of the window in order to see anything because the whole window shattered. So let's move on to the next slide. We're gonna conduct the same test and go from there. So it looks like we experienced a good point of impact shift. This is where we were zeroed initially, and we have a good 5-ish drop in elevation. And if you split the difference of this group, about a 2-inch shift and windage to the right. Now, I will say we did just beat the crap out of this Optic, so that's wasn't a very realistic test. And also, this slide is milled for an acro, not an MPS. Now, I do know the MPS is the same footprint as an acro, but the tolerance is gonna be a lot tighter if you put an acro on here comparatively to this guy. So when I drop this MPS on, it will move back and forth, so it's really, really dependent on how tight this screw is torqued down. So a little bit disappointing, but I honestly, not the end of the world considering, like I said, this slide is not exactly milled for an MPS. So now we're gonna get to test the iron sights on the pistol. So that's something we didn't do during the original test and evaluation of the XR920. And that is because, like I said and showed you, this Holosun is super broken. So we're gonna go over the high vis front sight post iron sight setup here. So it's blacked out rears. Now there are a couple different options for iron sights from Shadow Systems, but like I said, we have the high vis front and blacked out rears. Generally, we don't even recommend iron sights on pistols if you have a red dot, I guess, unless you have a Holosun. But if we do throw iron sights on there, we want just blacked out sights, just so if you can co-witness your sights through the optic, your eye doesn't get sucked into a high vis front sight post like this one or even a fiber optic. But given the fact that I have a Holosun and it broke, now I have a good front sight post I can shoot with. So let's test her out. .467 about the same time. Shooting really slow. So I did the same thing again on this like little bit of accuracy drill. So I actually shot one high. I got one down here. This is my first shot. And then under recoil, I started holding the sights high and I ended up just hitting high on the target. So let's see what happens at 40 meters. .562. Those splashes look very high. Okay. All in all, not too bad. So we got 4 rounds here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I had 2 up high. So my first 3 shots were high. I brought it down and kind of fixed it. But the iron sights are definitely usable. Now, given 40 meters, the whole front sight post takes up almost this entire target. So red dots are still definitely better. So we just wrapped up the confirmation evaluation on these prototype slides. Now, before we get into those, I would like to go over our results of our T&E testing and evaluation process on the XR920 pistol itself, because I know that's what you guys are probably most interested in. Now, to be clear, just to clarify one more time, we tested and evaluated both this complete pistol and these prototype slides with the intention of determining if T.REX Arms should sell a Shadow Systems slide on our website, and that slide would be to our design, to our spec, and all of that sort of thing. So we just want to make sure the pistol worked, basically. Now, we did go over the features of this gun, and I'm going to go over them probably again, but kind of give you a little bit more of a detailed opinion on each of those kind of upgrades that Shadow Systems come with out of the box. So let's start with the hilt again. So these do come with a good flared magwell that, not one that's attached or anything, but comparatively to a Gen 5 Glock 19, it's pretty similar, but I do think this one is a little bit better. Now, the grip angle of this pistol is pretty nice. Like I said, the texture is a little bit more aggressive, but I will say this polymer is just a different material compared to Glocks, and it feels just, I don't know how to really explain it, but like firmer or harder. So I was getting a lot more kind of wear on my hands with this gun comparatively to a Glock, and I'm not really sure why, other than the fact that the material is just different. Maybe I just have soft baby hands, I don't know. This gun does come with a double undercut out of the box. Very super nice, because you can just get a little bit higher and tighter on the gun comparatively to a Glock. That's why I stipple my Glocks. It's actually the only thing I do to my guns besides change out the magazine release. Talking about magazine release, the Shadow Systems has a fantastic magazine release, and you can actually buy these for your Glocks if you want to, and they're like 10 bucks or something like that. I would actually recommend this one, and it's just as good, if not better, than the Vickers magazine release. Going up from there, the slide release, like I said, is a little bit extended comparatively to a Glocks, like a Gen 3 Glocks or a Gen 4 Glocks. However, it is extended but doesn't stick out. It kind of pokes backwards, so it kind of just pokes back into your hand. So when I'm shooting the gun, as you guys probably noticed, I was not getting slide lock, and that is because my thumb actually touches it, and I don't have that problem with Glocks. So for me, not my preference. I prefer just the Glocks factory ones or a Glock with a Vickers slide release. Moving forward on the frame, we do have a kind of a gas pedal cut with it. I think it's unnecessary, but I know some people definitely do prefer that. So overall, when it comes down to the frame, there is a lot of upgrades comparatively to Glock. We also have an extended beaver tail, which is nice. I know for some people that get that slide bite with Glocks, and we have this texture that kind of looks like something you would pay for if you wanted to get your Glock stippled. Additionally, this frame also has kind of a shooter's cut going on, and all that is just a little bit of material cut out from the frame. So when you stick your trigger finger into the trigger guard, it's just kind of more of a direct line to the trigger. I don't think they're all that necessary, but it's definitely, like I said, a little bit of an improvement compared to a Glock. Let's go on to the slide. The serrations of this guy, like I said, are a little bit more aggressive than a Glock's, and this is gonna be kind of a personal preference. Some people don't even care about serrations. Some people like me, I do want serrations, but all I care about is I just have something on the front of the gun. I don't really care how they're angled, how they're textured, or anything like that. So all that to say, these serrations were very sufficient, and with them being more aggressive than a Glock's, if you're looking for something more aggressive, you have that in a Shadow Systems. Now, aesthetically, majority of people do like the more complicated, aggressive looks when it comes to the cuts on the slide. And given that this is the more simple design that Shadow System offers, this is still pretty cool looking. So if you're looking for that aesthetically appealing slide cut and design, this is a good option. We already mentioned the iron sights. Now the iron sights are actually metal comparatively to Glock's polymers, like I said, but the height of them are actually pretty good if you're looking to co-witness through a red dot. Now, like we discovered today, your red dot can break, and if it breaks like this Holosun, co-witnessing through it's not gonna matter. You're gonna have to take the optic off. But that's what I think iron sights are actually for. So for me, if I'm gonna keep iron sights on my gun, which I do think is pretty unnecessary, I guess unless you're using a Holosun, like I said earlier, but what I have them on my Glocks for, I have Glock OEM steel sights, is that if my optic does break, or even if the battery fails, I'm just gonna take the optic off and I have iron sights to go from there. I keep the tools for my pistol with me. I don't think that's big of a deal. But if you do wanna co-witness your iron sights, the Shadow Systems has these sized height-wise to be perfect with majority of optics. So if I have an SRO, an RMR, an RCR, a P2, you're gonna be able to co-witness your iron sights and they're not gonna protrude into the window all that much. So the Shadow System slides do have a couple parts of the internals that are proprietary, one of which is the extractor assembly, which is definitely the one that is the most unique. So when it comes to the ejections on the Shadow System pistols, like I said, we did notice a little bit of a weaker ejection compared to a Glock. So all I want to do is demonstrate and compare right now the ejection patterns between the Shadow Systems and a Glock 17, and also with one of these new prototype slides, and just show you guys what's going on here. So I will be clear. Again, we did not notice any malfunctions over the thousands of rounds we shot with this pistol, but we did notice the ejections get weaker and weaker over the duration of the testing we did. So let's start with the Glock 17. Let's do 3 or 4 rounds or so. All right, so super consistent ejections. Those are going about 8 to 10 feet away from me and about this direction. I know this is gonna be kind of hard for you guys to tell on camera, but it is right at 3 o'clock from presentation and about 10 feet away. So let's compare that directly to the Shadow Systems XR920. This is the complete pistol that we tested during the test and evaluation process. All right, so hopefully you guys were able to tell that the ejections weren't going nearly as high. They were going about in roughly the same pattern, a little bit more towards the 4 o'clock area, but they were only going about 4 feet away. So about half the distance and strength and elevation, I would say, comparatively to the Glock. So let's try out the new prototype slide. Now this is the Glock frame, Glock guide rod, Glock barrel, so just keep that in mind. All right, so that looks pretty comparable to the XR920. So overall, Shadow Systems proprietary extractor spring and extractor just assembly overall is weaker than a Glock's. But like I said, we didn't notice any malfunctions with it. Now time will tell if 5 to 8,000, maybe 10,000 rounds, you'll start to see some problems. But in our testing and evaluation process so far, with our sample size of 4, or actually it's 5 now, no malfunctions. Moving on from there, we do have a proprietary striker, and now there's nothing to worry about with this guy. Just know that you don't put a Glock striker in a Shadow Systems and vice versa, because they are a little bit different and they will break if you do mix them up. But other than that, they function the same so long you have a Shadow Systems and a Shadow Systems and a Glock and a Glock. For the prototype size we have, that's it. There's nothing else proprietary, but with the Shadow Systems XR920 that we have, it's just the end plate that's different, and it's just because of how the gun is angled. But other than that, it basically functions the same. Before we give our final opinions on this gun, just kind of wrapping up the T&E summary of this pistol, I want to talk about the shootability of the gun. So primarily the trigger and recoil control. So recoil with this gun is a little bit more snappy to compare to a Glock, but if you start shooting this by 100 rounds in, you're not going to really notice a difference. So yes, it is more snappy if you go back and forth, but like I said, you'll get used to it and you probably won't notice it. Next is the trigger. So the trigger is probably going to be a personal preference thing. I really like OEM Glock triggers. My Gen 5 Glock 17 trigger is really good and it's OEM. My Gen 4 19 is a little bit heavier, but it has a really crisp break. This guy is just heavy and has a little bit of a mushy break, but it does have a really good reset. So if you're looking to shoot fast, as you guys saw with some of the B-roll, is getting 1.3 and 1.2 splits with this guy. This trigger can be shot fast, but for me personally, I like more of a lighter trigger with a more crisp of a break rather than those triggers that have kind of a rolling break. And that rolling break is something that you're going to find more often with the Shadow System pistols. So when we give our final opinion on this pistol, we're going to be giving it in comparison to a couple things to a Glock. So first thing is going to be reliability. Now with this pistol, we had no malfunctions with it. We did have a couple of break-in things, but that's it. And actually the malfunction rate with this was less than our Glocks. And generally what we're seeing with our Glocks is just light primer strikes. We don't see double feeds or anything like that. And this pistol had less light primer strikes compared to our Glocks, and no other issues other than that. Now, like I said, we did have the weak ejections, but no malfunctions with them. The most unique thing about Shadow Systems is definitely their Optic mounting system. So like I said earlier, it's kind of a one-size-fits-all for most top-down screw-mounted optics. And all we wanted to do with these slides in particular is just confirm that the prototype slides we had were just as good as the XR920. So with the XR920, we did all of the testing when it comes to the durability of the Optic mounting system with the Delta Point. Because to me, it was a perceived thing that this guy was going to be mounted in the least secure way, and it's just because of how the spacer plates fit and everything like that. And it's a Delta Point, it's not going to be as strong as an RMR or anything, in my opinion. But we did 100 slide racks off this guy, and you guys saw the ways we were slide racking with the prototype slides, and no issues whatsoever when it comes to maintaining or losing zero. So this mounting system is definitely good to go. Now, when we went to confirm the mounting system today with our prototype slides, obviously the hollow stem broke, so we couldn't really confirm that it held zero, but I will say it was very, very snug on this slide. Nothing moved, so I would be pretty confident to say that this guy would have stayed zero if it didn't break. Moving on to the acro cut slide, our prototype slide, you guys did notice that we did have a point of impact shift after the slide racking. And I'm going to chalk that up to an MPS being mounted to a P2 slide. So this slide is cut for an acro P2 from Aimpoint, not a Steiner MPS. Now, these footprints are the same between the two optics. However, the MPS is a little bit smaller than the acro, so it's not gonna fit as snugly onto the slide. In fact, when I put this MPS down, it moves back and forth before I torqued it down. So like I said already, it's really relying on the torque of the screw. So I'm gonna chalk it up to that. That's why the impact was shifted, and it didn't shift crazy much. Definitely not what I wanted to see, but overall, we're gonna keep testing it, and we're gonna throw an Aimpoint on there just to make sure, but I'm pretty confident in this Optic mounting system. So finally, we're gonna give our opinion on this. I know some of you guys probably just skipped to the end of the video, or maybe you guys have been sticking it out and I really appreciate it. But to be clear, we have about 4,000 to 5,000 rounds fired on Shadow Systems. This gun is a little bit over 3,500 rounds in particular. So enough rounds to formulate an opinion, I think. And we're gonna say good to go with Shadow Systems. These pistols definitely work. They work better than some of our Glocks. They're not as pleasantly shooting comparatively to like a Glock 17. Now this is a Glock 45 size pistol, so not exactly a fair comparison. But Shadow Systems is a good pistol. There's nothing wrong with it in my opinion. I would definitely get Glock OEM mags to run with it instead of the Magpul mags that it comes with, but overall, good to go. So what does that mean with these prototype slides? The answer is yes. We are looking to make a slide with Shadow Systems to sell on our website. But that's going to be a long process. So the testing and evaluation process will continue on from here just to confirm as we get more and more samples from these guys that nothing changes, that it still maintains its reliability and durability. But it is definitely something I'm looking forward to, is that we're going to offer a T.REX branded slide from Shadow Systems with a very specific cut. So long nothing goes wrong. You know, there's a lot of logistics and everything else that goes behind these sort of things. But yes, these passed, we are looking to sell a T.REX arm slide. All right guys, that's all we have for Shadow Systems today. We do have some more information with some more findings regarding this pistol in our T&E summary. So if you guys have any questions and would like some of that information, email us at team@trex-arms.com. That'll go to CS. CS will get with me, and then I'll probably be able to answer some of those questions. So hope this video was helpful to you guys if you're looking at Shadow Systems, or if you're just curious about you know, another Glock type clone. But until next time, guys, this is Brandon at T.REX. Get out, shoot, and train.